In this video, we'll talk about the pipeline from Blender to Storyboarder. Now, Blender is a free application online, open source, very popular with people who don't want to pay hundreds of dollars per month for a high-end program. And all you have to do is go to the blender.org site and download the application. Anybody who's familiar with 3D stuff will recognize the paradigm really quickly. But not everything is going to come out of Sketchfab equally. Like I found this great looking Western kind of site, and once I exported it, it became kind of unwieldy because of the size of the scan. Bringing it into Storyboarder Pro ended up being this crazy, whacked out, crooked and overscaled thing, which was difficult to level back out. As you can see, I'm spinning the whole geo there, and with some effort I could have got it, but not all of these are going to come through lickety split like the good version I'm going to show here. So I found this downloadable rooftop model. I figured that would be pretty good. I'll go to the download options and select GLTF. That's the format that's going to transport over to Blender. And once I open Blender, there'll be a file and an import and get that same GLTF file format. Once I bring that in, I may find that things are a little big, and this is a byproduct of the method in which it was created. So you can see I'm heading on up to this rightmost menu and twirling down the name of the object and trying to find what pieces it's made of and what the sort of head of the hierarchy is. You could select the topmost thing, but I'm just kind of looking to see what it's made up of. Had to expand my window a little bit to see everything. And I'm going to pick up to the top of the hierarchy again. And then I'm going to use the scale tools to get that down to something that might be a little bit more the size that we need once it's into Storyboarder. So you can see I grabbed the top there and I'm just going into the X, Y, and Z scales and just kicking it back to something that kind of fits on the viewfinder. We see it looking like it's falling off the world there. It's too big. If it blends into the gray of the interface, that means it's really big. It's going beyond the scale of the scene. And that's going to bring us to the exporting part of this. So I will go File and Export and go back to that GLB, GLTF. And find, of course, a place to save it and save it out, making sure that it says GLB as our final export format. Once I'm back into Storyboarder, I'm going to open my Shot Explorer. This doesn't fit on the screen. Get that in here. What they recommend doing is getting a figure in there right away for scale, because you know that you're going to be using that. And I also move it away from the camera because I'm also going to add an object. So the default object is a little box. But upon clicking it, it allows you to go to that object's parameters and select the Select File version. And that's when we can import something else. And you can see our man is about 10 inches tall. So the scene that we brought in is super big. Something we're going to need to deal with by making sure it's selected and then going to the parameters for that object and scaling that down. And you can see I'm going pretty far to get it. Once I've got something that's in scale with my humans, which is then going to be in scale with any of the props that are in Storyboarder, I can start to maybe stage the scene a little bit. It's going to get hard to navigate around here. I did find a few other things that you can do besides using the mouse to translate. You can also use the arrow keys as if you might on a video game so that you could be walking around. And I wonder too that if you hook up something like a game controller, if it doesn't also acknowledge those same sort of arrow and button keys. But I'm using a mix of the keyboard arrows and some mouse movement and then the occasional grab of the controls down below the screen there to frame up some things. And once I know that my figure is in there and kind of in the place that I want to be, I can also then start hitting the Shot Explorer and just finding some cool angles. Now, one of the nice things about this is it already has a background. We've brought in one model and it's given us a full set instead of just we bring in a chair, we bring in a floor, we bring in a table, all those sorts of things. It takes a really long time. So if you can find the patience to dig through Sketchfab for things that are downloadable, things that work inside the engine once it's finally there, if you have the patience to go through Blender and then out to Storyboarder immediately and start placing and laying things out, can end up with some pretty cool things. So I'm just going to speed through the rest of this here as I start to add a couple models, design some shots, and then using the timeline here in Storyboarder, something I haven't talked too much about, changing the shot lengths on these to begin to create kind of an action animatic. Once I'm done with that, I can export it as a movie, or I can export it as stills. Once either of those things are done, I might think about adding something like some music to it, and then have something that approximates a pretty cool CG animatic for not too much effort.